The town of Ravenshade was small and peaceful, a place where everyone knew each other, and life moved slowly. At the edge of this quiet town stood the ancient Black Tomb, a mysterious structure that had existed for centuries. Its dark stone walls, worn by time, held stories of the past that most people could only imagine. Only one person truly kept watch over it: Leo, the tomb guard. Leo was not a man who sought attention. He walked with a steady, calm pace, his eyes always alert, his movements precise. At first glance, he looked like any ordinary guard, tall, strong, and serious. But there was something about him, an invisible aura, that made people respect him without question. Children would stare at him with curiosity, and even the adults seemed to feel safer knowing he patrolled the tomb each night. Every morning, Leo arrived at the tomb before sunrise. He unlocked the heavy iron gates, checking the perimeter carefully, noting even the smallest cracks or signs of damage. Each stone in the ancient structure seemed familiar to him, almost like an old friend. He had a routine, and he followed it without fail. To the townspeople, it was just the work of a responsible guard. To Leo, it was a form of meditation, a way to keep his mind calm and focused. But peace in Ravenshade was fragile. A gang led by a man named Rico had been causing trouble for weeks. They were loud, reckless, and full of confidence. Most people avoided them, hoping not to cross their path. But the Black Tomb had become a symbol of order and discipline that Rico resented. He wanted to show the town that no one, not even a tomb guard, could stop him. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of red and gold, Leo noticed movement near the tomb. Shadows danced in the fading light, and he could see the silhouettes of Rico and his gang. They were approaching with an air of arrogance, laughing and pushing each other forward. Leo did not flinch. He continued his work, checking the locks on the gates and inspecting the walls for any signs of damage. The gang's shouts grew louder. "Hey! Guard! This tomb belongs to us now." Rico's voice was rough, full of false courage. Leo turned slowly, his dark eyes meeting Rico's. He did not shout or threaten. He did not even frown. He simply looked at them, calm and unshaken. The silence was heavy, almost as if the air itself had stopped moving. The gang laughed, thinking his silence was weakness. "What's the matter? Cat got your tongue," one of them mocked. They stepped closer, their confidence growing with each movement. But Leo's hand rested lightly near his belt, a position that was natural for him but unfamiliar to anyone who hadn't seen it before. His posture was relaxed, yet every muscle in his body was ready, controlled, and disciplined. Rico hesitated, sensing something he could not name, but he forced himself to continue. "You think you can stop us?" Rico asked, trying to hide his unease. "We'll have this place in no time." Leo finally spoke, his voice calm but steady. "This tomb is my responsibility. I suggest you leave." The gang laughed again, louder this time. They circled him like wolves, confident in their numbers. But there was a subtle shift in the air. The wind seemed to carry the weight of Leo's presence. The children who had been playing nearby stopped, sensing something unusual. Even the adults on the streets noticed the tension, though they could not explain why. As the gang left, throwing empty bottles and trash at the tomb, Leo did not follow. He only watched silently, making note of each face, each movement, and each pattern. He did not speak to the townspeople about it, nor did he report the incident to anyone. He preferred to handle situations quietly, without unnecessary attention. Later, as night fell and the tomb was bathed in silver moonlight, Leo patrolled the perimeter once more. The shadows of the ancient stones stretched long and dark across the ground. He moved like a whisper, listening carefully to every sound: the distant howl of a dog, the rustling of leaves, even the faint footsteps of someone trying to sneak close. Leo's mind wandered briefly to his past, a time he rarely thought about. Before he had been a tomb guard, he had been trained for something far more dangerous. He had once led a team of highly skilled soldiers on missions that required precision, courage, and absolute control. But that was another life, one he had left behind. Here, he sought peace, simplicity, and purpose in guarding something sacred. Yet, despite his desire for calm, he knew that trouble would not leave him alone. The gang had chosen him as a target because of his reputation for quiet efficiency. They did not yet know the depth of his skills, nor the discipline that came from years of intense training. Tonight, Leo remained vigilant. He walked along the ancient walls, running his hands over the cold stone, listening to the distant hum of the town, and observing the night sky. Every star seemed to watch over the tomb as he did, and in that quiet moment, he felt a connection to both the past and the present. Leo knew that the days ahead would test him, though not with weapons or battles, but with patience, strategy, and understanding. The gang thought him weak, but he was far from it. He had learned that true strength often lay in silence, observation, and restraint. As the clock struck midnight, Leo returned to the center of the tomb. He paused, looking at the gates and the shadows that danced across the walls. In that quiet moment, he vowed to protect the Black Tomb, not with anger or violence, but with unwavering dedication. No matter what came, he would remain the guardian, unseen but always present. The quiet tomb had a protector, one who was more than he appeared. And though the gang believed they could challenge him, they did not yet understand the power of a calm mind and a disciplined heart. Leo, the tomb guard, remained ready, patient, and unshakable, standing between peace and chaos in the small town of Ravenshade. The morning sun rose over Ravenshade, painting the streets with soft golden light. Birds chirped quietly, and a gentle breeze moved through the town, carrying the scent of dew and earth. But beneath this calm, tension lingered around the Black Tomb. Leo arrived at his post early, as usual. He moved with calm precision, unlocking the gates and inspecting the ancient stones. Every corner, every wall, every shadow received his careful attention. It had been a week since the first encounter with Rico and his gang, and Leo could feel their restless energy growing. The townspeople had noticed a shift too. Shopkeepers whispered about the gang's growing boldness, but no one dared confront them. Only Leo remained undisturbed, focused entirely on the tomb. He did not need to speak to anyone to know that trouble was coming. They had marked him as a target, and he had been expecting this day. By late afternoon, the gang appeared again. This time, they were louder, more aggressive. Rico led the way, striding confidently toward the tomb with a swagger that tried to mask the unease in his eyes. His friends followed, laughing and shouting, kicking small stones along the path. "Look who's here!" Rico called out, pointing at the tomb gates. "Still pretending you own this place, guard?" Leo emerged slowly, brushing his hands on his uniform, his calm expression unchanged. "This tomb is under my care," he said evenly. "Leave now, and no one will get hurt." The gang laughed, a harsh, mocking sound. "Hurt? You? You're just a guard." "We can do whatever we want," one of them shouted, stepping closer. Leo said nothing. His silence was deliberate. He observed each member of the gang, noting their movements, the way they held themselves, and the small signs of fear hidden behind bravado. Though they did not realize it, every gesture they made was being recorded in Leo's mind. He had trained to read people like this once, on missions far more dangerous than this, and he still remembered every lesson. Rico's face twisted in frustration. "Why aren't you scared? Everyone else runs when we come," he barked. Leo's gaze remained steady. "Fear is a choice," he said quietly. "I choose not to have it." The gang exchanged nervous glances. Something about Leo's calmness unnerved them. It was not just confidence. They could feel a quiet power in him, a presence that seemed to grow larger with every passing moment. But their pride would not let them admit it. Instead, they decided to escalate. That night, they returned with paint cans, spray painting the tomb walls with crude messages. "This is ours, and guard beware," were scrawled in messy, black letters. They laughed loudly, thinking their actions would intimidate Leo. When Leo arrived the next morning, he simply observed. He did not react with anger or panic. Slowly, methodically, he began cleaning the walls. He worked carefully, removing every mark, restoring the ancient stone to its original state. His actions were quiet, yet each one sent a silent message: intimidation would not succeed here. Word of the gang's activities spread through the town. Some people whispered that Leo was brave, others said he was foolish to confront such danger. But Leo did not care about their opinions. His focus was on his duty, on protecting the tomb, and on preventing chaos from taking root. As the days passed, the gang tried new tactics. They moved objects, left threatening notes, and even followed Leo after his shifts, trying to catch him off guard. Each time, Leo anticipated their moves. He would walk calmly, often disappearing into shadows and reappearing where they least expected him. He used his environment wisely, slipping through alleys and behind walls, ensuring he remained unseen yet always in control. One night, Rico and two of his men decided to confront him directly. They hid behind a low wall near the tomb, waiting for him to pass. But Leo, noticing their movements, changed his route subtly. He moved in silence, his senses sharp, his mind alert. As he passed near them, he shifted his body slightly, a subtle motion that disarmed the situation without violence. The gang froze, realizing too late that he had anticipated them completely. Rico's face went pale. How did he know?" one of his men whispered, voice trembling. Leo did not answer. He only continued his patrol, leaving the gang behind, shaken and fearful. The lesson was clear: brute force would not win here. They were dealing with someone who had mastered patience, observation, and control. That night, Leo returned home to his modest apartment. The room was simple, with only a few pieces of furniture and a small desk. He sat quietly, reflecting on the day. His thoughts wandered to his past, the time before Ravenshade, when missions required life and death decisions. He remembered the lessons he had learned: control your fear, observe everything, and never underestimate an opponent. Even though the town was far from the battlefields of his past, the principles remained the same. Danger came in many forms, and today, it had come as a gang seeking to intimidate him. But Leo knew that violence was not always the answer. Patience and strategy could accomplish more than anger or weapons ever could. As the town slept, Leo prepared for the nights ahead. He planned, quietly, without drawing attention, ensuring he would always be ready for the gang's next move. And somewhere deep inside, he felt a sense of calm satisfaction. He was not just a guard, he was a protector, capable of keeping the peace in a way that no one else could. Outside, the moon cast silver light on the tomb, its shadows stretching across the quiet streets. Leo stood at his window, looking at the gates he had sworn to protect. He knew the gang would not give up easily. But he also knew that he was ready. For every challenge, every threat, and every test, he would stand firm. The Black Tomb had a guardian, and he would not fail. The night air in Ravenshade was cool and still. Stars dotted the sky, and the soft sound of leaves rustling in the wind filled the quiet streets. The Black Tomb stood tall and silent, a shadow against the moonlight, its gates closed and unbroken. Leo walked along the perimeter as he always did, his steps slow but precise, his eyes scanning every corner, every shadow. This night felt different. He could sense the energy of the gang in the air, their impatience and frustration from the past week. Rico had been humiliated more than once, first when his threats were ignored, then when his spray-painted messages were cleaned without a word. And now, the gang had become bold enough to follow Leo, hoping to find an opening, a weakness, something that could prove they were stronger. Leo's mind remained calm. He had trained for situations far more dangerous than this. In his previous life, he had led a team on missions where the smallest mistake could cost lives. Now, he faced a much simpler challenge, but the principle was the same: anticipate, observe, and control. Around midnight, the gang appeared, moving silently through the shadows. They thought they had found the perfect opportunity to confront him. "Tonight, we end this," Rico whispered to his friends. "That guard is nothing. We'll scare him, and the tomb will be ours." Leo, however, noticed them long before they realized he was aware. He slowed his steps, pretending to be unaware, letting them think their plan had gone unnoticed. But his senses were sharp. Every footstep, every rustle of clothing, every whisper reached him clearly. He knew exactly where they were, how they moved, and what they intended to do. The gang stepped closer, trying to corner him along a narrow path beside the tomb. Rico's hand moved toward a stick, pretending it was a weapon, though he had no real plan to use it. "Come on, guard," he sneered. "You think you can stop us?" Leo stopped and turned slowly. The moonlight revealed his calm, composed face. He said nothing, only watching them. His silence was heavier than words, filled with the strength of someone who did not need to prove anything. The gang hesitated. Their confidence began to waver. There was something about Leo that made them uneasy, though they could not put their finger on it. They had expected fear, resistance, or even anger. Instead, there was only stillness, a quiet power that seemed larger than life. Leo's hand moved subtly, a small gesture, barely noticeable, but it demonstrated perfect control. Rico felt it instinctively, a twinge of fear that made him freeze. For the first time, he noticed the discipline in Leo's posture, the careful observation in his eyes, and the readiness in his stance. This was not an ordinary man. They had underestimated him. The gang tried to regain their courage. "What are you waiting for?" one whispered. "Attack us or back off." Leo did not move aggressively. Instead, he shifted slightly, controlling the distance between himself and the gang. In a single fluid motion, he disarmed them not with force, but with skill and precision. Rico and his friends stumbled, caught off guard by how effortlessly they were overpowered. Their own movements, meant to intimidate, had been turned against them. The gang fell silent, wide-eyed, and trembling. They could feel the weight of his experience, the years of training behind each calm gesture. They realized, too late, that this was not a guard who could be bullied or scared. Leo spoke finally, his voice calm and unwavering. "This is your only warning. Leave this place and never return. If you come back, you will face consequences you cannot imagine." Rico opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. The courage he had relied on for so long had vanished in the presence of someone who commanded authority without shouting, who demonstrated power without aggression. Slowly, the gang backed away, the lesson clear. Tonight, the guard had proven he was far more than he appeared. After they left, Leo continued his patrol. He walked around the tomb's perimeter again, checking each corner, each shadow, making sure no one had lingered. The quiet returned, and the soft night sounds filled the space once more. He knew the gang would regroup, but for now, the immediate danger had passed. As he returned to his apartment, Leo allowed himself a moment of reflection. He thought about his past missions, about the lessons he had learned in faraway places. He remembered the importance of patience, of reading people, and of acting only when necessary. Those lessons were what had allowed him to handle the gang without causing real harm, and what had protected the town without anyone realizing it. In Ravenshade, life continued around him. The streets were quiet, and the townspeople remained unaware of the danger that had crept so close. To them, Leo was simply a dedicated guard, a man who watched over the Black Tomb with care and responsibility. They did not know the depth of his skills, nor the strength hidden behind his calm exterior. The moonlight reflected off the tomb walls as Leo stood for a moment, looking at the gates he had sworn to protect. Shadows stretched long across the ground, but he saw not danger, only the responsibility he carried. He had chosen this life to leave violence behind, yet he had not abandoned the skills that made him who he was. Tonight had reminded him that peace often required courage and wisdom, not anger or force. Leo returned inside, closing the door behind him. The room was simple, his home unadorned, a reflection of the life he had chosen. He sat quietly, thinking about the gang, about the town, and about the quiet lessons he had just taught. No one else would know what had happened, and that was exactly how he wanted it. True protection, he knew, was often unseen. Outside, the night deepened. The black tomb stood silently, its ancient walls strong and unyielding. And inside, Leo remained alert, ready for whatever came next. The gang had underestimated him, and the lesson had been taught. But in his heart, he knew that vigilance was never ending. In Ravenshade, peace was fragile, and the tomb required a guardian who would remain calm, prepared, and unshakable no matter what challenges lay ahead. The quiet of Ravenshade was comforting to most of its residents, but for Leo, it carried a sense of vigilance. Each morning, he walked along the same stone paths leading to the black tomb, his boots making soft sounds against the ancient ground. Every detail mattered to him: the small cracks in the walls, the patterns of shadows cast by the sun, the slight movements of birds or leaves. Leo's life in this town was simple, almost peaceful. To outsiders, he appeared to be a dedicated tomb guard, a man content with quiet duty. But there were nights, when the moon was high and the streets empty, that his mind drifted to a time long before Ravenshade. A time when the world was far more dangerous, and survival depended on skill, precision, and courage beyond ordinary measure. Years ago, Leo had served as a commander in an elite military unit. His days were filled with missions that required strategy, speed, and absolute control. He had led men through impossible situations, guided them out of danger, and faced life or death challenges that few could even imagine. But that life had come at a cost: friends lost, battles that left scars not visible on the skin, and memories that refused to fade. Leo had left that world behind, seeking something different: peace, purpose, and the chance to protect without bloodshed. The black tomb offered him that life. Its walls were not just stone, they were a place of responsibility and trust. In watching over it, Leo could honor discipline and duty while leaving the chaos of his past far behind. Yet, the presence of Rico and his gang reminded him that danger never truly disappears, it only changes form. They did not know it, but they had awakened a part of Leo that was trained to respond, to protect, and to act decisively when needed. That evening, as the sun dipped low and shadows lengthened, Leo patrolled the perimeter once more. The gang had been quiet for a few days, likely recovering from their previous encounters. But Leo knew better than to assume peace. Experience had taught him that trouble often approached quietly, waiting for the right moment to strike. He paused near a broken section of wall, brushing his hand over the rough stone. In his mind, he ran through scenarios, predicting how the gang might attempt another attack. He knew their weaknesses, their overconfidence, and their tendency to act without thought. Every observation he had made in the past week allowed him to plan, silently and carefully, for the challenges ahead. As the evening deepened, Leo returned to his apartment, a modest space with few possessions. Here, he allowed himself a moment to reflect, to remember his past, and to prepare mentally for the nights to come. He pulled out a small notebook, pages filled with notes, observations, and reminders. It was his habit to record details of his patrols, unusual activity, and patterns he noticed. Each note was a piece of a larger picture, a puzzle that helped him stay one step ahead. Leo's thoughts drifted further back, to memories of his command days. He remembered leading his team through deserts, mountains, and cities, relying on nothing but skill, intuition, and trust in one another. He remembered the lessons learned from those experiences: patience was power, observation was safety, and restraint often spoke louder than force. These lessons had shaped him into the man he was now, quiet but formidable, calm but vigilant. As night fell completely, Leo patrolled the tomb once again. The moonlight illuminated the ancient stones, casting long, dancing shadows. Every corner, every gate, every wall received his attention. He felt the subtle shift in the air, the faint traces of movement that might indicate someone watching or approaching. Though no one could see it, he could sense it, a skill honed over years of training and experience. Suddenly, a noise from the far side of the tomb caught his attention. It was soft, almost imperceptible, but to Leo, it was loud enough to draw focus. He moved quickly but quietly, his steps precise, his breathing calm. As he approached, he realized it was only a stray cat, prowling the tomb in search of food. He smiled faintly, appreciating the reminder that not every alert needed action. Yet, even this small moment reinforced his understanding: vigilance must never waver. Later, as he returned to his apartment, Leo prepared a simple meal. He ate quietly, his thoughts still on the past and the present, on the balance between danger and peace. He considered the gang's behavior, their boldness, and their ignorance of his capabilities. He knew they were growing impatient, likely planning something new, something riskier. And he was ready. Leo also understood that his past could not remain entirely hidden forever. The skills, the discipline, and the calm presence that intimidated the gang were all rooted in experiences he could not fully erase. But he also knew that revealing too much could bring fear or misunderstanding to the townspeople. So he kept his history locked away, allowing only his actions, calm, measured, and precise, to speak for him. As he sat by the window, looking at the black tomb bathed in silver moonlight, he felt a quiet sense of purpose. Protecting the tomb was more than a job, it was a commitment to the town, to history, and to the principles he held dear. He had left chaos behind, but he had not abandoned his readiness. He had chosen a life of guardianship, and he would honor it in every moment, every patrol, every decision. Tonight, the streets were silent. The black tomb stood firm. And Leo, the quiet guard with the past hidden beneath calm eyes, prepared for whatever would come next. He knew that the gang's next move was only a matter of time. But he also knew that no matter what challenges arose, he would face them with the same patience, precision, and strength that had guided him throughout his life. In Ravenshade, peace was fragile. But with Leo watching over the black tomb, it had a protector who was ready, steady, and unwavering. And though no one yet understood the full story of the man behind the guard, the town would feel the safety of his presence every night, without ever knowing the depth of the experience and courage that lay beneath his calm exterior. The town of Ravenshade slept under a calm, starry sky, unaware of the tension that lingered near the black tomb. Leo walked his usual route along the perimeter, his footsteps soft against the stone paths. His mind was alert, focused, and patient. He had spent days observing the gang, studying their movements, learning their habits, and noting every weakness. Tonight, he was ready to take action. The gang had grown bolder after their previous encounters. Rico, frustrated by his failures, had convinced his friends to try a more daring approach. They planned to enter the tomb grounds under the cover of darkness, hoping to intimidate Leo and prove their control. They did not know that their every move had been anticipated. Leo had prepared carefully. He had examined the tomb and its surroundings, noting shadows, walls, and pathways that could be used to his advantage. He had set subtle markers, small signs that would help him position himself strategically, without drawing attention. Every detail had a purpose, and every plan relied on patience rather than force. As the moon climbed higher, the gang approached. They moved quietly, sticking to the edges of the walls, confident that the darkness hid them. Rico whispered instructions, guiding his friends with gestures. Remember, don't get caught. Tonight we finally show that guard who's in charge. Leo waited, blending into the shadows. He did not rush, did not reveal himself, and did not react. He watched the gang move closer, letting them believe that their plan was unnoticed. His calm mind observed each step, each glance, each hesitation. When they reached a narrow passage beside the tomb, the trap was ready. Leo had positioned himself at a vantage point, hidden from view, with the advantage of both sight and timing. As the gang stepped into the corridor, he moved quickly and quietly, intercepting them without aggression. His presence alone caused them to pause. What are you doing here?" Rico whispered, his voice trembling. Leo did not answer immediately. He watched, noting their reactions, their confusion, and their fear. Then, with a few precise motions, he guided them into a small enclosed area, blocking their escape routes without raising his voice. The gang realized too late that they were surrounded, and the confidence that had carried them this far evaporated in an instant. Rico tried to speak, to demand control, but his words faltered. His bravado was gone, replaced by a sense of helplessness he had never felt before. Leo's calm gaze held them, showing no anger, no malice, only authority and intelligence. The lesson was clear: recklessness had consequences, and patience was more powerful than force. "You should have left this place," Leo said finally, his voice steady and calm. "Now, you must listen. Leave and never return." The gang exchanged nervous glances. They wanted to argue, to resist, but the subtle precision of Leo's movements and the quiet control of the situation left them paralyzed. They understood, without words, that he could overpower them at any moment, yet he chose not to. His restraint was more intimidating than any weapon. Slowly, Rico nodded, his pride crushed but his understanding clear. He motioned for his friends to leave. They stumbled back along the path they had come, each step heavy with the weight of the lesson they had just learned. Leo did not pursue them, he simply watched until they disappeared into the darkness. Once the gang was gone, Leo returned to his patrol, moving with quiet precision. He checked every corner, every wall, every shadow, ensuring that no trace of the gang remained on the tomb grounds. The night was calm again, and the black tomb stood unbroken under the silver light of the moon. Afterward, Leo returned to his apartment. He poured himself a small cup of tea and sat by the window, reflecting on the events of the night. The gang had learned their lesson, but Leo knew this was only temporary. They might try again, driven by pride or frustration. And he would be ready. He thought about his past, about missions that had required far greater skill and discipline. Those experiences had taught him the importance of observation, patience, and strategy. They had shown him that confrontation did not always require violence, and that a calm, measured approach could achieve results that anger never could. He had carried these lessons with him to Ravenshade, and they had guided him once again. The streets of the town were quiet, the soft hum of the night filling the air. Leo's mind remained alert, scanning for potential threats, analyzing patterns, and planning for any future attempts by the gang. He knew that true protection required constant vigilance, and he was willing to remain watchful for as long as necessary. As he looked at the black tomb, its ancient walls strong and unyielding, Leo felt a quiet sense of satisfaction. The tomb was safe, and the lesson had been taught without unnecessary harm. His duty was more than a job, it was a responsibility, a commitment to the town, and a promise to protect the peace that so many took for granted. Leo's calm presence had once again ensured that chaos could not take root. The gang had been outsmarted, not overpowered, and the lesson would remain with them for a long time. And for Leo, this was enough. He turned away from the window, preparing for the next day. The black tomb would always require vigilance, but he was ready. His mind, trained for challenges far greater than any gang in Ravenshade, was sharp, his body disciplined, and his resolve unshakable. The trap had worked perfectly, and the tomb remained a place of peace, watched over by a guardian who moved quietly, thought carefully, and acted wisely. Outside, the moonlight reflected off the ancient stones, casting long shadows that stretched across the ground. Leo's presence, unseen but powerful, ensured that the tomb would remain protected. And though no one else in the town understood the depth of his skill, the safety and calm of Ravenshade were a testament to the quiet strength of its watchful guardian. The town of Ravenshade slept under a soft, silver moon, its streets quiet except for the occasional rustle of leaves or the distant bark of a dog. The black tomb stood silently at the edge of town, its ancient walls bathed in moonlight, strong and unyielding. Inside, Leo patrolled as usual, his movements deliberate, his senses alert. He knew the gang would not remain defeated for long. Their pride would force them to try again, perhaps in a bolder and more reckless way. Rico and his friends had spent the day in secret, discussing the events of the previous night. The humiliation they had felt lingered, gnawing at their confidence. "We can't let him think he's unbeatable," Rico said, pacing back and forth. "We need a plan that will show him who's really in charge." His friends nodded, though unease shadowed their faces. They had seen the calm control in Leo's movements, the quiet precision with which he handled danger. It was not just skill, it was discipline, focus, and patience. The more they thought about it, the more they realized they had been foolish to underestimate him. Meanwhile, Leo remained alert. His past experiences had taught him that overconfidence was often a person's greatest weakness. He anticipated that the gang would return, and he had prepared accordingly. Unlike them, he did not act on emotion. He acted with strategy, using every advantage offered by the environment, his training, and his awareness of human behavior. As night fell, the gang approached the tomb once again, this time with more caution. They moved quietly, sticking to the shadows, whispering among themselves. Rico's voice was low but filled with determination. "Tonight, we finally end this. He can't stop all of us." Leo watched from a hidden vantage point, noting their every movement. He allowed them to advance into the open area near the tomb gates, where the shadows stretched long and deep. As they entered, Leo subtly shifted his position, guiding them into a corridor he had prepared as part of his careful plan. The gang realized too late that they were trapped. The passage was narrow, walls on either side, leaving no escape route. Their attempts to assert control faltered as they sensed Leo's presence closing in around them. "Stop!" Rico shouted, though his voice lacked the confidence it had carried before. We want no trouble." Leo stepped into the moonlight, his calm gaze fixed on the gang. "This is your only chance," he said quietly. "Leave now, and never return. Do not test your limits further." The gang froze, the weight of his authority sinking in. It was not his words, but the complete control he demonstrated that overwhelmed them. Every movement, every stance, every quiet gesture radiated strength. They realized that Leo was not simply a guard, they had underestimated someone far beyond their comprehension. Rico's bravado faltered. He had thought courage came from numbers, from force, from noise, and intimidation. Now he understood that true courage required discipline, skill, and awareness, qualities he lacked entirely. The confidence he had relied on for so long dissolved in the face of Leo's steady presence. Slowly, Rico gestured for his friends to leave. They stumbled back along the path they had come, the lesson sinking into their minds. No words were needed, the calm authority and precision of Leo's actions spoke louder than any threats or weapons ever could. As the gang disappeared into the darkness, Leo returned to his patrol. He moved along the tomb walls, checking corners, shadowed areas, and gates. The night air was crisp and quiet, carrying with it the faint sounds of the town that slept unaware. He allowed himself a moment of reflection. The events of the evening reminded him of his past missions, of situations where quick thinking, careful observation, and patience had saved lives. Those lessons had never left him, and they had guided his actions tonight. The gang had been outmaneuvered, not through violence, but through strategy and calm precision. Leo understood something important: power without control is dangerous, but restraint with skill is true strength. He had proven this tonight, not only to the gang but also to himself. He did not seek recognition, but the quiet satisfaction of a job done well filled him. Back in his apartment, he prepared a simple meal, sitting quietly by the window. Outside, the tomb stood illuminated by the moon, its walls reflecting the silver light. Leo thought about the gang's potential next move, about the town, and about the peace that must be protected at all costs. He knew vigilance was a continuous responsibility. The Black Tomb, though ancient and silent, was more than just stone. It represented history, culture, and the trust of a town that depended on him, even if they did not fully understand. Protecting it required more than strength. It required patience, wisdom, and the ability to act decisively when needed. As he sipped his tea, Leo reflected on the events. The gang had been challenged, and their overconfidence had been corrected. Yet he knew they might return again, perhaps emboldened or desperate. He welcomed the challenge. His training, experience, and discipline had prepared him for far greater threats, and the Black Tomb, and the town around it, would remain safe under his watch. Outside, the streets of Ravenshade were silent. The night air was cool, carrying with it the faint scent of earth and stone. Leo's presence, calm but powerful, ensured that safety remained. The town slept peacefully, unaware of the lessons just taught and the guardian who had ensured that peace remained intact. Tonight had been a turning point. The gang had learned the limits of their power, and Leo had reinforced the quiet order of the town without causing harm. The lesson was clear: respect, discipline, and intelligence outweighed reckless bravado. The Black Tomb had a protector who would remain vigilant, prepared, and unshakable, no matter what challenges lay ahead. The first light of dawn spread gently over Ravenshade, brushing the rooftops with soft gold. The town slowly awakened, unaware of the tension that had filled the night, unaware of the lessons learned near the Black Tomb. Birds chirped, and the soft murmur of morning routines began to echo through the streets. Yet at the edge of town, the ancient stones of the tomb stood silent and strong, a testament to time, history, and now, to the guardian who watched over them. Leo walked his morning patrol as usual, his steps calm and steady, his eyes scanning the walls and gates for any signs of trouble. The night had been quiet, the gang had vanished, and the tomb had remained untouched. But Leo knew that peace was fragile, and he remained vigilant. He thought about Rico and his friends. Their arrogance had been their downfall. They had believed in their strength, their numbers, and their ability to intimidate. But Leo had shown them something far more powerful: calm, patient intelligence, and the courage to protect without yielding to fear or anger. As he moved along the tomb walls, he reflected on his past, on the days when his skills had been tested in far greater battles. That experience had shaped him, had taught him discipline, focus, and the importance of observation. Yet he had chosen to leave that life behind, seeking quiet duty rather than constant conflict. The tomb had offered him a new purpose, a chance to guard something sacred without needing to confront the chaos of the world directly. And now, after the events of the past week, he understood that his past had not left him, it had prepared him. The gang had been foolish, reckless, and unprepared. But Leo had been ready, not through violence, but through patience, strategy, and unwavering calm. He had ensured the tomb remained safe, and the town remained unaware of the danger that had approached. Later, Leo returned to his apartment for a brief rest. The room was simple, modest, and quiet, just like his life. He made a small breakfast and sat by the window, looking at the tomb in the distance. Its walls reflected the morning light, shadows stretching across the ground. He allowed himself a small smile. The lessons had been taught. The peace had been restored. For the gang, the night had been unforgettable. Rico and his friends had retreated, humbled by the realization that the man they had underestimated was far beyond anything they had imagined. They had learned that strength was not only about numbers or aggression, it was about control, intelligence, and restraint. The memory of Leo's calm presence would remain with them, reshaping their understanding of courage and leadership. Leo, however, sought no recognition. The townspeople continued their lives unaware of the danger that had come and gone. They noticed only the continued order of the tomb, the cleanliness of the grounds, and the steady presence of the guard. That was enough for him. True protection, he knew, was often unseen, quietly shaping safety without the need for praise or acknowledgement. As the day progressed, children ran past the tomb on their way to school, waving at Leo as he walked along the walls. Shopkeepers nodded, and neighbors smiled as they went about their routines. To them, Leo was simply a dedicated guard. But beneath the calm exterior, the guardian remained alert, ready for any challenge, prepared for any threat. He paused near the central gates, looking at the massive stones and ancient carvings. The tomb had stood for centuries, weathering storms, time, and neglect. Now it had also endured the pride of a small gang, tested by their arrogance, and remained intact. Leo felt a quiet pride not in himself, but in the preservation of something sacred, something that represented history, responsibility, and trust. Even as the sun climbed higher, Leo continued his patrols, moving with the same care and precision as always. Each corner, each shadow, each wall received his attention. He understood that vigilance was never ending, that peace required constant effort, and that true strength was often quiet, patient, and disciplined. That evening, as the sky turned soft shades of orange and pink, Leo reflected on the lessons of the past days. The gang had learned theirs. He had demonstrated his, not with anger or violence, but through calm, calculated action and unwavering determination. The town remained safe, history preserved, and the black tomb stood unbroken. The streets of Ravenshade were quiet again, the sounds of evening filling the air. Leo returned to his apartment, taking a moment to look at the tomb one last time before night fell completely. He felt a sense of satisfaction that was quiet but profound. His duty had been fulfilled. The peace had been restored. And yet, he remained ready. Ready not out of fear, but out of responsibility. Ready not for recognition, but for protection. Leo knew that true guardianship required patience, awareness, and the courage to act wisely, even when unseen. That was the lesson he had lived, and the lesson he had taught. As night settled over Ravenshade, the black tomb stood silently under the moonlight, its shadows long and deep. Leo walked along its walls, a calm and steady presence. The gang had been humbled, the town remained unaware, and history was safe. In that quiet, Leo understood something essential: real strength was not loud, not aggressive, not boastful. Real strength was quiet, patient, and disciplined. It was about protecting others without seeking praise, about standing firm without fear, and about ensuring that peace could endure. The town of Ravenshade would continue its life, peaceful and unaware, and the black tomb would remain intact, watched over by a guardian who understood true strength. Leo, the quiet tomb guard, had become more than a protector. He had become a symbol of restraint, wisdom, and courage. And in that quiet strength, the town was safe, history preserved, and peace restored.